Are you looking for a beginner-friendly handheld that has a fantastic looking screen, plays Nintendo DS games perfectly, and doesn't break the bank either? Well, this is the ANBERNIC RG40XX H, and it's a great starting point. Now just remember, we're giving away a Nintendo DS package at the end of August. If you'd like to be considered to win, subscribe down below, and we'll pick one of the subscribers. So this is one of the new handhelds coming in a hail of Gatling fire from ANBERNIC, which seems like it's coming every few weeks we get a new device. But this is kind of aimed toward the budget and beginner-friendly category because it has all that secret sauce that they've been using on all of their beginner entry-level devices that work really well for emulation. So let's take a look at the hardware and see what makes this one different than the slew of others they've been throwing at us. And this hardware isn't very much different from a quality perspective, but on this device we have a 4-inch IPS screen, which is a 640 by 480 resolution. And on the face of the device, we have a D-pad that is squishy and not clicky, 2 joysticks that are clicky and not squishy, and also have a RGB ring around the base. These are Switch-style joysticks that are just fine. A menu button that is clicky and not squishy. Start and select buttons that are also clicky and not squishy. A, B, X, Y buttons that are squishy and not clicky. And on the bottom of the device, we have speaker grills that face directly down, 2 SD card slots, and 1 headphone hole. Moving on to the sides of the device, they are rounded and have no buttons. But on the top here, we have a few things going on. On the left top side of the device, we have L1 and L2 that are very, very clicky and not squishy. And on the right side, we have R1 and R2 that are also very clicky and not squishy. Following along the top, we have a power button that is clicky and not squishy, a volume rocker that is clicky and not squishy, power indicator light, a USB-C port, a reset switch that is clicky and not squishy, and a mini, not micro, HDMI port. On the back of the device, we don't have anything but some branding. So as you can tell, this really fits into the ANBERNIC's lineup as a different option for basically the same hardware. So the buttons are generally what we've seen before. Sticks, screens, all that kind of stuff is the same, but this is a different form factor. So if you're looking for an entry-level handheld with a different form factor, this hardware might be for you. But let's take a look at the software and see what other differences that this console has compared to the others. And the software that this is running is the ANBERNIC Linux front end here, where everything is laid out in a menu system, all porting over to RetroArch, Drastic, or the standard emulators running most of the software. And moving on to power, everything from the 8 and 16-bit eras of console runs fantastic on this device, all the way up to the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Those scale very well on this device because of the 4-inch screen, and look great doing it. Moving up just a little bit farther, things like Game Boy Advance play awesome on this device. It scales really big to a screen this size, and even though it's larger than the actual screen of like the Game Boy Advance here, it still looks pretty good. Next up are some 3D consoles with the N64 and PlayStation playing very well on this device. Having those dual joysticks really help out. And this is kind of where we start tapping out for power on this device. Moving up one more to the Nintendo DS and PSP era, the Nintendo DS plays incredibly well on this device, even being able to speed it up a little bit to get some of those slower to play RPGs going a little bit quicker. And the screen scaling actually works fantastic on this device because stuff like the Nintendo DSi XL came out for these types of games, and they were able to scale up to around that same screen size. The DS games look fantastic on here, and play great too. Now PSP, on the other hand, is definitely hit or miss. This device doesn't have enough power to play the entire collection, but it does a pretty good job of playing a few games. So simple to render games and not 3D intensive games like God of War will be able to play on this device. This lining up with the same power level of a lot of other ANBERNIC devices. I think they did a pretty good job. So after seeing all the hardware and software features of this device, it doesn't really stand out in an order of magnitude from all the other devices. So what does this thing have with pros and cons that you want to get over the other ones? Well, instead of going over what I like and dislike about this console, let's compare this to a few other things in this price category and power category and see maybe it might just be a different form factor choice for you. And here are some of the other consoles that I picked around the same size and general layout. So to recap, this is the RG40XX H with the 4-inch screen, joysticks, and all the stuff you just heard. Plays pretty much up to the Nintendo DS and PSP. This is the RG35XX H. Same form factor, a little bit cheaper, and has a 3.5-inch screen with the same resolution, and will play pretty much up to the same thing, up to Nintendo DS and PSP. Also from the same company. Now this is from a different company called Retroid. This is the Retroid Pocket 2S. I think this is a fantastic little handheld running Android, so you can get game streaming and other types of Android games on here, and will play a little bit higher up into the power level around the GameCube era. Now this screen's a little bit smaller as well, the 3.5-inch screen, but I think these controls on this feel fantastic. And lastly, I added a Nintendo 3DS in here because you could play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, NES, SNES, DS, and GBA games all on the 3DS here, in addition to 3DS games. So in this size category, the 3DS gets a lot done for around the same size. And you get 2 screens. So I actually really do think this is a nice device for a beginner starter handheld. If you haven't bought your first handheld emulator yet, and there's a slew of them, and you're looking for a horizontal form factor and a 4-inch screen, I think this does really well for that. Now, there are plenty of others which we've already gone over, but if you're looking for video that go over all the other stuff, and I really do think that the Nintendo DS on this system was one of its standout features, check these other devices out because they play Nintendo DS pretty well too, but have different size screens and different size form factors and buttons and layouts. So check those videos out here because YouTube recommends them, and I might recommend one of them myself because I can choose them too. But that's all I have for the RG40XX H. I think it's a good device. It's definitely a beginner's device. May not be for you if you have one already, but stands out because it's new and it's a little bit bigger, and we've seen too many of these from ANBERNIC. Just put out like 4 a year and just make them awesome. You don't need to make this many. All right, Davey out. Bye.